Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Gutsy Women Club. This is our first Gutsy Woman profile. And I am so excited to be here with Marilen Crump, whom I've known for several months now. Last fall we were introduced to one another. And I think it's only fair for me to tell you that Marilyn is my extraordinary business coach. I'm coming at you from my RV, which is currently at Shenandoah River State Park in my lovely, I guess it's my adopted state of Virginia. So, welcome, Marilyn, and thank you so much for joining us. And can you give the audience a little bit of an overview of what it is you do, what your mission is?
Sure. Well, thank you, Dr. Brenda. You're amazing. And I love this whole thing of bringing together gutsy women. It's fantastic. So I'm also in Virginia, claiming it as my home state as well. I actually grew up everywhere, being a military brat, as you call it, and discovered that, I really love certain processes of strategy and organization. And throughout my life, I've always tested the limits of my talents. And so I have been a professional theater, touring person in musical theaters. I've done film production, taught ballroom dancing for very many years, actually, and participated in certain charities around here, like Dancing with the Williamsburg Stars. I sing professionally also, but it's one of those things that everything just culminated to a point where I needed some place to really express myself and share all of these things that I discovered. So in 2011, I opened up a brick and mortar Art Inspired. Art Inspired has been my brand since 2000, kind of housing all the things that I do. I'm also a corporate photographer. So it's one of those things that people go, how are you doing all this stuff? And I want to do some of the things that you do. And so I started an apprenticeship school for photographers back at that same time that I started the brick and mortar, started teaching people what I do for business, how I get my brand out there, and how to be very clear about what it is that I do, even though there's different segments of the things that I share with the community. And so training photographers not only on their skill, but also on the business mindset, that eventually led to people saying, well, you helped me so much with my photography business. My friend, she's a massage therapist. And so I was thinking, well, why not? It's the same principles, because you need a strong brand. You need to be very organized. You have to understand business and how to do transactions with people. And so that flowed into teaching authors, public speakers, other people with brick and mortars, just anybody who's in either a startup mode or they've been in business for a while, but they really haven't gotten the right flow in order to make it so that they have all the pieces together, because most people are solopreneurs, and you know this, especially nowadays, people are braving it and going into business for themselves. But sometimes enthusiasm and passion is not enough. You really need to make sure that you're organizing all of your gutsy moves so that you can be successful. So now I would call myself more like on the 90% scale, doing business coaching and strategy than doing my other talents. I still do the things that I do. Like yesterday, I had a photo session with a client. And so those things are always still ongoing. But I really found my groove and I found my passion, which is helping other women really get to that sustainability for the business and be out there and be bold about what they do so that they can achieve their dreams. So bottom line, I help you catch those dreams, create an expert kind of process out of it. So I kind of dubbed myself the expert dream catcher.
That is so cool. I mean, I know you wear so many hats, it's kind of hard to keep track of. I would love for you to sort of rewind yourself to like age 12
Mm-hmm.
and tell
Hmm.
me sort of what the expectations were of you, and how that, fit with your gut feeling as to what you really wanted to do.
So I would say I started life as an introvert, but we moved from the Philippines, where I was born, when I was 7 years old. So already like yanked out of your comfort zone. You had to learn a whole new different language, a whole new culture. I discovered snow for the first time around that moment. And so started first grade here in the United States. There was a lot of changes that I had to like either be really good with or remain scared about. So little by little, I came out of my shell. So by the time I was probably 12, which is entering middle school, that's probably around the time when we got our citizenship too. So that was pretty exciting. So there's this whole new identity as an American, and also identity now sinking in that, I am my father's daughter, but I hadn't seen my dad for a while because he joined the US military and we had to be left behind in the Philippines. And I didn't see my dad until when I was 7 years old. So, discovering like, oh wow, this dude is really cool. And awkwardness in age 12, come on, middle school, it's so tough. But that's what you learn about human dynamics, right? Like you learn so much about like the interactions you have with other children, even adults too, because they're seeing you like a tiny little kid anymore. You're 12 years old, you're preteen. And so I think a lot of things happen to everyone developmentally around that time, but especially for me though, having to marry like my old perspective of a different country, going through a new life, and then being in military too, we always kept moving different states and stuff. I was really just still getting my footing as who I was on this planet.
And did your parents, as you got into your teen years and headed to college, what were the expectations? What did your family expect of you?
So they were like, hey, you're in this country, you got to make the most of it. And from what their perspective was, you work super hard, you're given this opportunity to not be, lower class or anything. But to them, like success was doing the grinding, right? Like 9 to 5 or 6 to 10, whatever it took. You get a stable job, you get a job with benefits, you go to college, go be a brain surgeon. I had all A's. That's one positive thing about being an introvert. You study pretty well. So, grades were not a problem. And so they had high hopes for me being a doctor, or scientist or something like that. And that was the expectation. And I really, tried to follow it as best as possible. I mean, being a very agreeable kid, like I didn't want to do anything that would disappoint my parents. And so I didn't realize all the other things I was not able to express because I was living the life that they expected of me until I got to college. And it just opened my eyes that other people were making these very, very bold choices, these gutsy choices about what it is they're going to be. And then they really had a vision for themselves and it was their vision. And I was lost with that. Like, I'm like, well, wait a minute. You mean I can pick my own path? Like, this is scary. So I found myself kind of self-sabotaging grades that I never, ever had, like D's, and even to the point of failing a class. I tried to withdraw from a class in college and they wouldn't let. It was well within the time frame, but, some kind of, I don't even know why, but they decided, no, we're not going to take your withdrawal. You're going to have to suffer through the class. And I never knew they could do that. They held me to it, and got a D- or something. My grades were so good already that didn't really hurt what the outcome was for the college part of it, but the ego part really hurt because I was like, this is not me. I'm a high functioning individual. But I had a great talk with a couple of different people, like the chaplain there, and then also one of my advisors. They're like, what it is that you're not living who you want to be, and that's why you're doing that, and it's your way of rebelling and acting out. And I see that with a lot of people in their jobs. Maybe they're not functioning very well in their workplace. It's maybe because it doesn't fit who you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm so glad that I discovered that. Changed my major around. I self-designed after that. I had claimed psychology as my major before that, thinking biology would be my major. The compromise was the psychology major, but then I was like, I didn't even like that. So I self-designed in creative arts therapy. So music, theater, dance, art. I was, all this self-expression was like bubbling up to the surface. And so here we are. I marry a lot of that kind of exploration with the arts and different like music and dance and all that wonderful style design. Now that's part of my life and I can live it boldly, but it had to take that moment of failing in order to choose something different.
You know what's really fascinates me about your story, and as well as others, is that professionally and intellectually, you have all this creative stuff going on, and you don't want to be pigeonholed. So you expand out, but then tell me what happened, like when you got married and you sort of, it sounds like you fell into that traditional trap, at least with your family life. So you've got this family piece, and then you have, your creative side and your career and who you want to be. So can you talk about, what happened, getting married and having kids, and I'll just let you roll with it.
Absolutely. Well, you have a lot of confidence coming out of college. You're young, you're strong, you have energy. And so it's always good to make a bold decision, say, I'm going to dream, right? Right after college, you can do that. And people go, that's cool, do it. But you get to be a certain age. And for my mom, it was 25. You're getting old, right? So
Old maid
by the
status.
time I was 25, not married, right? It was just kind of like, what? This is a shocker. How are you going to get through life without a husband, right? So I was thinking, is she right? Am I just like wasting my life, like doing like theater and film productions and like, dancing? Am I wasting my life? Because that's what everybody else says. Because when I look around at the people that I knew, they had jobs. I had friends up in DC right after college. They got recruited, by WorldCom and like Bose Allen Hamilton, and they're talking about their 401ks, how that's growing and it's fantastic, and they're going to the bar every weekend. And I'm like living paycheck to paycheck, but it was still exciting. But theater and stuff pay that much, but I was loving life. Had my little tiny apartment, rented my furniture. It was great, but I would always question myself, like, am I doing the right thing? And so I was like, well, I need to settle down, tie my horse up because that's what society's telling me. So meet this guy on paper, everything sounds great. Chemistry wise, I knew it, but I was just like, but my parents like him. I mean, they approve. And he was telling me all this stuff like, yeah, you can still do that once we're married. Literally, as soon as we got married, he changed. He was just like, nope, you don't need to be doing that. You need to be my wife, let's have kids. And I was just like, what's going on? But I was like, I got to try. I'm married now. This is my obligation. I'm about to have a kid. I'm now obligated as a mother. That all that stuff was for young people. I'm old now. I'm now 26. This is, I got to leave those those things behind because society says I have to be a good parent, have to be a good wife, I have to be a good daughter to my parents. I can't waste my life chasing dreams that don't benefit anybody else. So then, did that for a while. I was still trying to dabble in stuff, and then it got annoying to my then husband. He was just like, you're too much, I don't know what to do with you, so he told on me to my parents. It's just like, I can't break through to her. She's so hard-headed. She's always trying to do these artsy things, and she still wants to have a career in photography and ballroom dance. Like, what in the world? And so everybody was turning against me to the point where he was just like, well, I'm leaving. Here's all your stuff. He bagged my stuff up in trash bags. He was also like emotionally abusive because it was part of the world I constructed. Like, I wasn't worthy enough for these dreams, so I needed somebody to like whip me into shape to say you're not normal. So I end up in this marriage of somebody telling me that the whole entire time, every day, you're not normal. I'm disappointed in you. You have nothing to offer the world. Just be a mom. And I think about other females like that may be suffering through that same thing. You then think it's normal. You think that's the normal. And then you have like friends that aren't really your friends. They're not even stimulating friends to you. You're just people with more expectations of who you're supposed to be. And then that of course backfires, because when you're not living legitimately, your light goes out and people don't like you anyway. Like they sucked all the life out of you, but still expect to like you. They're not going to like you. You're not going to like yourself. So I had to go through that terrible mess for him to finally just go, fine, we're done. And I was like, great. And then he kind of pulling me into the process. And I say, fine, take everything. Just don't take the kids. You can have everything. I don't want child support. I want alimony, whatever. Just make sure I have the kids. And so we have joint custody of the kids. He wouldn't give me all of that either. So, I mean, he took out everything. But my whole thing was, after that, I felt so relieved that no one was holding anything over my head, because I felt like if I had the support from him financially, that I'd be like tethered to what he'd want still for, whatever, obligated. And so to bring that long story to a nice end here, sometimes you need all of these different things that just, just kind of tear you up, because some of the things that you put on is not for you and it's not yours. And I'm very grateful that I end up meeting my best friend, who's now my husband, who is just a beautiful person, who's just like, what do you want to do? Who do you want to be? And I was like, what? Like, what are you asking me? You're strange for asking me what I want to do in my life. And like meeting people like you, Dr. Brenda, it's so refreshing that you're saying, I'm leaving all the trappings behind. I want to explore this, wonderful country and really live my life in a different way. It is gutsy. It is definitely not expected, and it's not normal, but I would not want to go back to what normal was supposed to be. Never.
Right. So I mean, at that point, when your husband threw all your stuff on the yard or whatever he did, you've got two kids. Your self-esteem is probably in the toilet. And
Zero.
it's like, and from reading your bio, you're probably like 30 years old. And what's also interesting to me as a financial coach is that statistically, women after divorce do much worse than men after divorce. And part of it is that mentality of like, you know what? I want the kids. I don't care about the house. I don't care about the money. So financially, you're starting way at the bottom again, because you feel like that's how I really separate from him. And so I see that happen quite a bit with women, and there's those traditional ties. So you're now remarried, very happily remarried, and you have three more children. So you've got 5 kids. How do
Yay!
how do you manage this? I mean, I come from a family of 5. There are 5 siblings in my family, and then we have like the older group and then the younger group. And I don't know how my mother in particular did it. So I'm just I mean, how do you juggle all that?
So it was interesting last year because we had one high school, one middle school, one elementary school, and then the twins within preschool. So it was just kind of like, it was a conveyor belt of like kids coming out of the house and then coming back into the house. And it was just like that. You get used to whatever it is. I tell people that, like, if you're used to one kid, you're used to that. Once you have two kids, you get used to anything, right? But one thing that you always want to do is have a great team. And I really feel like my husband and I are a great team. I didn't have that before. My husband, he's not traditional according to his mom, because she's always shocked when he's like giving the kids a bath, or before when they were babies, like he would change the diapers. And she was like, oh gosh, his dad would never have done that. So we're breaking through, especially he's breaking through all these societal norms that were highly advertised as well. If you look at advertising way back when, they were telling you how to live your life. I think nowadays you have to say, what is it going to take for our household to be harmonious? And if we're both leaders in our own household, how can we make sure that both our point of views are explored? What's our common ground? And then share that with the children as well, and then function that way. I think a lot of people are all talk, no action. I also feel like some people aren't grounded in like their own expectations and their willingness to share the load or responsibility. There's some people who are just control freaks, and then there's some people who don't even want to lift a finger. So a lot of it is self-development. I think you can manage anything, whether it's a busy business. I don't care if you have 0 kids, but you're busy anyway. If you have, things that you're doing, I watch how you get through all your stresses and your challenges on the road. I see that, the markers of your great personality is that you stay level headed, that you're always like thinking things through and coming up with the alternatives and, hoping for the best outcome, but staying clear in the moment on what needs to be done right now. So I try to make sure that I have no unrealistic expectation for my children. They are where they are right now. I got to love them for who they are right now. If they need something right now, that's what we address. We don't try to force, my dream for you is this. I live that life. I don't want my kids feeling like they have to like become something that I expected of them. I want them to be able to find the ways to develop who they are as people, so that as they get older and things change around the world, who cares, right? Who cares what your label is? It's how you deal with the challenges. And that's our role as parents, is to be able to put that first for their perspective so that they can be more successful.
With the Gutsy Women Club, yeah, there are people who just take risks and they don't think about the consequences. But for me, and I think also for you, I mean, I've had some difficult times. You clearly have had some difficult times. And those times, I think, make us stronger and more resilient. I mean, how do you think about, resilience? We've seen women in particular go through all kinds of horrific things. And as the weaker sex, which of course we know we're not, but I mean, what do you think is it that makes you resilient so that you could, get through those difficult times and eventually be happy again, do what you're doing, be true to yourself?
I love that question. I think the first mechanism that you really need to understand is your own mind, because that no one at this moment, until they put implants in our brains, technically, no one can infiltrate that part of you. And and I say that because it starts with choices and the habits that you create for your life. And this is where it resounds for me. It took me a while to get there because a lot of us are driven by our heart, which I love that. That's really good. But the heart is so in an emotional sense, right? It's everywhere. And it's sensitive and it is reactionary. And I would rather create than react. I mean, switch the letters around and add one more E to it. You have it's technically the same letters, but how you organize yourself to either be a creative or a reactive person, that that leads all the different choices that you have. Whether you want to take risks or not, how you calculate that, it doesn't matter. To me, it's all about what can I create in this moment? What's around me, right? Some people take risks with their money, but they're only reacting to something. Like, oh, I got to buy that because someone else has that. Instead of that, I try to see things like, oh, I want to create that. Oh, it's going to take some money to create that. Okay, let's move that over here. That's better to me than stressing, oh, I can't do this because of this and this. And that's a whole nother pathway that most people go through. They go through that whole worry line. What if, what if, what if, what if, what if? Stop doing that. Just say, create, 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 create. And then there's so many things that flow with that. Wonderful things. So if you're a startup, and Dr. Brenda, I love the things that you're creating. You are a consummate creative, and you're a content creator. It's going to be such a wonderful thing to show, right? Look what I created. Not just what I thought about, what I actually created. So it starts with the thought, but then it goes into the action part, creating things that's tangible, that other people can observe, that you can in turn like look back and say, I did that. Love it. Good job.
You mentioned, a lot of people talk, but they don't do. And
Yes.
I find that, I mean, I even discovered that with myself. It took me a long time to realize that I wasn't where I wanted to be, and I didn't have to be there. So then I had to go to the do part. Um, and so with all the women, I mean, you coach so many different women. Are there some common threads that you see that sort of are roadblocks, or where do people get stuck from, hey, Marilen, I've got this great idea I want to do, and then it just, they don't do the part. So what are the roadblocks that you see?
The roadblock is not knowing how to get anything done, and that's a worldwide issue. We're not taught in the right way. We're just taught to regurgitate, information that we soak in and then spit it back out. There is a process to life, and I actually have coined it. The dream success strategy is one of the big things that I love teaching people, and that's how the underlying philosophy that I use to teach my clients. That's what I resonate with every day. So DREAM stands for this. And if you're watching, listening, write it down. D starts with direction. You got to have a direction. You got to know where you're going. R, which is the toughest part, is you have to relinquish. So let's say you want to clean house, organize house. You got to be like Marie Kondo, relinquish a bunch of stuff, right? Things you don't love, things you don't need, things that are broken. That part's hard because we get sentimental, but that's the necessary part. E, you got to spend a lot of time in E, which is efficiency. If you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich, the largest chapter in that book, which is right in the center, the thickest chapter in that book is organized planning. That's what people forget. They go, oh, I just got to think and then I'm going to be rich. No, in that book, the whole middle section, the hugest section is organized planning. And so that is efficiency. You've got to organize for efficiency because inefficient action is not going to get you anywhere. And then action, once you've figured out your efficiencies, once you've organized it all, when you're taking the action, it should feel fantastic. It's great. You're in that intuitive sense so that you can say, I need to tweak this, or I need to change this up, or I need to bring more of this. When you're in that mode in the action, because you're not fixing things that you should have fixed before taking the action, it's so much better. Like I watch you plan your trip. You've organized the planning for your action so that it's smoother. There will be hiccups, but it's not as bad because you took the time to plan it. And so getting to that action mode, fantastic. It should be fun. It shouldn't be like drudgery because then you find yourself getting into momentum, momentum. And that's where you can do it all day long. You could teach others, you're seeing the fruits of your labor. It's fantastic. So finding that trajectory. Now, one thing I do want to mention that's super important is after momentum, unless you keep moving up, right? If you plateau, it's just that, you get to a level and you're stuck again. What needs to happen is what I call a retrograde, so that there's this pullback. Some people call it resistance. I call it retrograde because you almost feel like things are like happening backwards. You're not as good as you were before. Like, why is this happening to me? And then you're in this place where you're spinning, spinning, spinning. When you recognize that, it's time for a new direction because all that energy is supposed to shift you to the next level. And then when you pick the next level, because you already have all this momentum before, so you've learned so many great lessons, you've turned a lot of great ideas into a process. When you shoot back out after retrograde, man, it's like this climb. So you see a lot of people who have businesses, right? They turn another business into another successful business. You got people like Richard Branson, they can keep moving up, 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 up. Elon Musk, like all these things. They've figured that out. Like the best innovations come from like those hiccup moments, those moments where you're like, oh man, this is not what I want, because they get to refocus, redirect. And like we're all redirecting right now in this season, right? With the whole pandemic and other issues, we're figuring things out that has to change. And so that's my process. I use that for everybody. I use it for everything. It works for everything. So definitely tell me how you use it, and then you'll see it works.
That's a lot of information. This would be a good time to tell folks how they can get access to you and see some of the dream analogy, for instance. How do they find you?
Sure. Well, you can listen to a podcast that I have. So ask Siri if you have that. Just say, Siri, I want to hear Dream Success Strategy podcasts. So that's one way. My website has a couple places where that you can jump off from. So marilencrump.com. But also I've been using the hashtag expert dream catcher. So if you just plug that in, a bunch of search results will come up for me. So I'm out there. So feel free to connect.
Excellent. I'm going to add that to the discussion, to the comments here. I want to return just a little bit, because when I talk about like being a gutsy woman, and you just talked about how things are a process. I believe that people either say, well, I'm just not gutsy. It's just not within me. I can't do this. Just the same way that people might say, well, I don't know, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm not creative. We tell ourselves we're not this because we have this belief we're either born this way or not. And I believe there's a process to being gutsy. And so, I mean, what do you think? Are people just like, this is who I am and I can't possibly be gutsy? I can't possibly, be a dreamer? Or, I mean, what do you have to do to sort of escape that I can't do this mentality, or that's not who I am mentality?
I think you have to look at what inspires you. One of the things that I used to do, because I was not a clean person, my parents were pack rats. I had to look at magazines. I had to watch stuff. I had to go over people's houses. I had to like observe those who were not what I was, just to see how they did it. I think you study things. I love when people get a mentor. I love that you're a leader in this space, Dr. Brenda. They really need to look at the choices that you're making, because if you can't do it for yourself, you're not going to be the one to come up with the solutions. You got to find somebody who inspires you, someone who can mentor you, coach you to becoming that, because in that kind of gentle sense, they can understand where you're coming from. So communities, be in a community. If you want to be more gutsy, be in a gutsy community, because you are a compilation of all the things that you surround yourself with, the people that you let influence you. So if you say, I'm going to make a decision and be gutsy, and then you don't change your circle, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, I'm making a decision to be gutsy, there's a gutsy women's club, sign me up, right? If you're going to go into business and you didn't sign up to like get a business plan together, come on, like you need necessary tools. And I feel like other people's energies who've been there, that's a huge necessary tool. You can't generate that same energy. Like you don't have the fuel for that. Other people who do, they know how to generate it, and they can pour into you. Like a Dr. Brenda can pour into you money sense if you don't have it. If you don't have the gutsiness, Dr. Brenda can pour it into you. If you don't have the strategy and you don't have the organization, well, let Marilen Crump pour that into you. You got to be an open receptacle for other goodness in your stuff, but you can't do that with a crowded plate. You got to relinquish some stuff. You got to get rid of the things, get rid of the people who aren't being like supportive of your new gutsy moves. You don't really need them. You need the people who are there where you're going.
Right. I totally agree with you. And the older I get, it's like getting very picky about who I hang with. If you're negative, stay away. I want to turn this back to you, you're a dream catcher. Now we're going to fast forward. It's 10 years from now, let's say. I mean, your kids are, we'll say they're independent. I mean, what are your dreams? What do where do you see yourself in a decade?
I will probably still be doing a lot of things similarly, because I've gotten to a place now where I really appreciate I appreciate nature. I love where we live because I can look out my window and be in nature pretty quickly, get on the water. I remember when I was young watching the movie Twins, and it's so funny that I have twins now. But do you remember, if you remember that movie, in the end when they found their mother, but she pretended that she wasn't, she was in this commune painting in her big hat outside, right? And that image has always stuck with me. Like I see myself as being able to just sit outside in a big floppy hat with a paint set and a canvas and just like do that all day long. I love serving others. So if the need is still there for me to be of service, then I will be doing that. But if it's utopia and everybody's doing good and they don't really need me to do anything, I will be outside painting a pretty picture in my big hat. So
That
that would be a fantastic way to be in 10 years from now.
that sounds divine, and it takes we grow ourselves, and it also to me shows like contentment. Like, you know what? This is who I am, and this is where I'm going, and this is what makes me happy. And you go, girl. That's just terrific. So, any
I love
last
your painting too, by the way.
part?
Sorry, I don't. I'm going to interrupt because I'm going to interrupt for a second because if people haven't seen your art, they need to see your art because I love what you're doing with your adventures and like putting them down on paper in a colorful way. It's fantastic.
Sketches, which are consuming too much time right now, but thank you. Any last words or pieces of advice for the Gutsy Women Club, and especially for the women who are just thinking about this, trying to dreams down. Maybe they're a little bit afraid to move forward. What does Marilen Crump say?
I say you really have to know yourself so that you can give more of yourself. And when you find your tribe, that's precious. That's better than finding, jewels or gold or anything like that. It's linking arms with the right kind of people. I feel like if all the gutsy women linked arms, we would have such a different world out there. And that's really what's needed so that we don't have to react to so many things that aren't going right. We need to all step in together. If there's a woman who wants to be a leader, who wants to, become mayor of her town or something, other women need to be like alongside of her and say, "You go, girl. Like, how can we help?" Not just, "You do that. Good. I'm going to watch you from afar." I feel like as gutsy women, we all need support. Gutsy doesn't, to me, it doesn't mean I can do it by myself. That's a foolish women's club. You need to be in the gutsy women's club, right? And be in a mastermind. And that's my advice to all of you. And then for you, Dr. Brenda, as you build this community, make sure everybody understands that this is not a transformation so that you can be independent and alone. Dr. Brenda is independent, traveling alone, but she's finding communities. She's meeting up with people that resonate with the same energy. And that's what it's about. This whole world could be so much better if we took that as our main responsibility.
Well, that is a utopian view, and it's a great way to end the interview. So thank you, Marilen. This has been fabulous. You really kicked off the Gutsy Women Profile series with gusto. I'm so happy that I'm working with you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the next years, the next decades bring. So thank you so much, Marilen. And again, I'll have some resources there, but look at marilencrump.com. Is that correct? Okay.
That's
Great.
correct.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So
Thank you.
take care. Bye bye.